Thank you to our ranking member as well, and to the witnesses. Thank you for your testimony. And Mr. Singleton, as I was listening to you talk about the endowments, et cetera, I'm not going to ask you a question, but if there's data available, I would sure like to get copies of it. But let me just begin. When establishing foreign influence compliance protocols, institutions of higher education have to balance compliance and create a welcoming campus climate. I am a retired 40-year college professor, so I do have an interest in that. But I am pleased to see how many institutions take this dual responsibility seriously. Florida International University, for example, established a university-wide task force on foreign influence and global risk. Mr. Yang, can you discuss briefly the value of incorporating community stakeholders when developing policies around foreign influence and international research collaboration?
Thank you for that question. It is absolutely vital for the community to be involved. Right now, what we are seeing is the community is scared to speak up about issues such as this because they feel like they are being targeted, whether it is scientists in the university space, whether it is students that are thinking about applying to universities here in the United States. There is a clear chilling effect that is happening because of this rhetoric that is being used. And I respect what Mr. Singleton is saying, but I must take issue a little bit with the focus again on China. Yes, there are issues with respect to transparency, but if we are focusing just on what the Chinese government is doing, what the Xi Jinping government is doing, then we are missing the forest for the trees. Yes, we should be talking about transparency, we should talk about accountability, but it should be accountability for all different countries, all different foreign influences.
Okay, thank you, sir. So can you discuss best practices for engaging with international academics in a way that maintains relationships and protects international scholars from racial discrimination?
Thank you for that. Part of this is setting clear standards, and I see with respect to NSPM 33, which was promulgated by the OSTP, trying to standardize guidance with respect to research grants, what is necessary to be reported. I agree with Mr. Moore that Section 117 could be a very useful vehicle to make sure that we have standard forms that should be used. One thing I would want to be careful about is the enforcement mechanism, whether investigators are trained on how to investigate these issues, and what the enforcement actually is. Too often we have seen Asian American scientists have basically paperwork errors turn into criminal prosecutions when these should be handled as an administrative matter.
Yes, sir. So we know that maintaining academic openness and collaboration in academia allows us to engage with bright individuals from all over the world, and if there are threats against international academics, it prevents amazing talents from working with our universities. So let me ask you, Mr. Yang, in what ways has the Asian Americans Advancing Justice worked to combat issues of racial discrimination?
Well, on combating racial discrimination as a whole, it is really an all-of effort. First is making sure that we are teaching history in our schoolrooms on Asian American history, and making sure that all of the different communities are represented, whether they're African American, Latino American, LGBTQ Americans. Part of this is making sure that everyone is comfortable telling their own stories. Part of this is making sure that scientists and researchers and students are comfortable talking to law enforcement, feeling like even if they make an administrative error, like Sherry Chen did in saying that she had a contact with a Chinese person in 2011 rather than 2012, that doesn't become criminalized behavior. Making sure that we are specific about how we are engaging with the community, consistent engagement, not only from the law enforcement end, but from the get-go in terms of creating these standards that we're talking about.
Thank you, sir. You mentioned in your testimony that MIT, Yale University, Stanford, for example, and at least 8 other institutions have issued statements detailing their concerns with the targeting of Chinese scientists and academics. So can you just explain briefly, I just have about 20 seconds, on the investigations against people of Asian descent and how they may affect the number of academics that engage with our universities?
For those universities, some of them are afraid of hiring them. And some of them are afraid of engaging with them and collaborating with them because they fear that they're going to have additional burdens imposed upon them or have their behavior be criminalized.
Great. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm right on time. I yield back.